Hey everybody, welcome back to the channel. Getting back to work on the Glock 30 in this video. Last one on this firearm, I went ahead and disassembled everything in the frame portion, as you can see laid out here. I did bring up that I was going to order a new slide lock slash takedown, which I did. What I ended up ordering, these came from Deltac, and these are extended. As you can see, they've got like an angle, so they stick out just ever so slightly further. You can go directly to their website. I actually bought these from eBay. It seemed to have the best price for the parts plus shipping, and then the more you ordered, the lower the price, so I did order 3 because I have plenty of other Glocks that I can use these in. So they'll work with almost all of the up through Gen 4 Glocks, as you can see here. Oh, no, it doesn't give the exact breakdown. But anyway, I think it's pretty much everything other than like maybe the 42, some of those like slimline ones. But it does show on their website what all it'll work on. So this will work perfectly for this firearm. So grab one of these out of the bag and swap it for that part. But anyway, this video, I'm going to start going through doing all the polishing of the parts on the lower frame. So that is going to be the trigger bar, getting that cleaned up, because if you feel it, it does have somewhat of a texture to it. So this whole thing is going to be polished both sides, including the shark fin. Also, the actual trigger mod, the housing, I'm going to pull the disconnector out here, as well as the ejector, and go ahead and get those polished up, put them back in. As far as the disconnector, this comes out, there's a tab here at the bottom. You just kind of pry it from behind very carefully. You do not want to bend that tab any, because you'll throw off the action of the part. And then this just pulls out, pretty much directly slides, say from this angle to, or in that direction, it just slides into place. So I'll pull that out, polish that. And then really not going to do anything with the slide stop. I mean, I can probably just go over and do a little light cleanup, as well as the lock, the new lock. I'll obviously replacing the OEM one. I'll probably just do a little cleanup on those, nothing crazy. They don't have to be perfectly polished. And then also the locking block, I'll go ahead and polish this up just for good interaction with the barrel, because it does have a texture to it as well. And then as far as the frame goes, you do have the rails. They're pretty good and smooth if you run your finger over them and you're limited on the access. I probably still will go over them with the buff wheel just to try and make sure they're as polished as possible. But yeah, looking at them, they're in pretty good shape. So that's really what is on the agenda for the frame assembly. So that being said, I am gonna get everything ready and grab the polish and the polish wheel on my Dremel, and I can get to work. Real quick, I did grab one of the new slide lock slash takedowns, and you can kind of see just it's ever so slightly longer where it angles out, but butted up with the stock one, it's not a huge difference, but it'll just give you that little bit more of purchase that you can grab when you're trying to disassemble the slide from the frame. All right, and starting to disassemble the trigger housing, you can see I already got the ejector started. All I did was kind of come in behind it with a small flat blade screwdriver, and I was able to catch the lip of the metal, push on it a little bit, and it started to slide out, so I can just grab it and pull it the rest of the way. And then I'm going to do the same, like I said, with the connector slash disconnector. Just pry up a little bit under here. Very careful not to bend this tab that goes in at this end. All right, and here you can see the two parts are removed from the housing. Like I said, pretty straightforward. And there you can see the tab I'm talking about again. If you go under it right where it has this little bit of a recessed area here, you can get a thin flat blade under there, and it doesn't take much force to pop it out. So just don't go up high and come at like this angle where you're going to bend it or anything like that. And then same thing, just got the flat blade behind this when I loosened it up and just pushed it straight out, and again it slides right out of the front of the housing. So all set there. So next I'm going to go ahead and grab the polisher and some flits, and I can get to work on some of these parts. All right, quick update. You can see the ejector and the connector slash disconnector. I've gone over those, got them nice and polished. They're much more slippery, as you can see, just popping on my finger. But especially this side of the connector right here is you really want to concentrate on this, because this is where the end of the trigger bar rubs on that. So you can see this abrasive part of the trigger bar rides on that. So that is going to make a big difference cleaning that up there. So these parts I'm done with. I can go ahead and put them back in the trigger housing. And then next on the list will be the trigger bar. All of this is going to be gone over. Any metal you see there, I'm going to go over all the sides and bits and pieces to go ahead and smooth this out as much as possible. All right, and here you can see the trigger bar after going over it a couple of times with the flits and polish. Makes a huge difference. You can feel how much smoother it is, and like I said, you're concentrating on the areas which are touching something else. So the outside of the trigger bar, this can rub on the inside of the frame, so you want to make sure that's nice and smooth. And then in this area here, this is all, again, what is going to be touching the connector, so you want to make sure this is nice and smooth. And then of course the cruciform, because this is going to be moving in and out of the housing as well as catching the sear, so you want to make sure this is nice and smooth as well, and there's nothing on it that's going to grab hold, any little burrs or anything like that. So now that I've gone over these metal parts a couple of times with the flits and the polish wheel, I'm going to finish them off with a buff. This I only really use on the chrome looking parts, the parts that are going to have good shine to them, and that are very important as far as connecting to each other. So I'm going to go ahead, put this in the Dremel, buff these couple of bits out. I'm not doing it to the ejector, that really doesn't matter as much. I've already put that back in the housing. But being that these two parts are in contact with each other, and make contact with many other important vital components, these are ones that you want to have as smooth as possible. So I'm gonna go ahead and get this swapped in the Dremel and go ahead and polish those up. All right, and here it is after buffing. You can see I did put the connector back in the housing and just like loosely set this into its place. I didn't hook the spring back up, but going back and forth, you can feel that there is literally zero resistance. It slides nice and smooth, and that's without any grease or anything like that. So that is what you're looking for. You want that action to be really nice where this rubs on this, and then also where the cruciform has to sit in the step on the other side there. You want to make sure that everything is moving nice and smooth. And then you also do want to polish this little nub up here, as I will get into that later, but that actually that's how it works here, is it rides on the inside of this groove on the slide, and that is your in battery connector / disconnector. But more on that in future videos. But yeah, definitely want to make sure that that is nice and smooth as well, so that'll ride nice and clean on the inside of the slide. So that is it for the trigger components. I'm gonna put those off to the side right now. So I do still have to do the locking block, and then I'm just gonna do a light little polish on these two components, the slide stop and then the slide lock / takedown lever. All right, and here we are, last parts are done. So I'll start with the locking block. Again, only going over the areas that are really going to be in contact. So you can see, basically on the sides here where they stick out, and then everything inside of there where the barrel is going to lock into the locking block, including that area there on the bottom, because it kind of goes into that, there's like a V groove on the barrel that engages this block. So all this has been smooth. I used the flits on the polishing wheel, and then I did take the actual buff to this as well. So you can see the difference in the texture. This is what it looked like before, because I didn't touch any of this, where it's just going to sit inside the frame, and then how polished this is here. You can definitely feel a difference between the two. So there is the locking block. And then as far as the slide catch, all I really do on this is the area that is hidden inside the frame, because this is, between the trigger and the frame. So I did both sides of this portion, and it's nice and polished and smooth. And then I also did where it hits the magazine, and where it engages in the magazine, and that's what pushes up on this when the last round is fired to lock the slide back, this tab here. So I did polish both sides of that, but I didn't do anything with the outside because this should stay dark, as it's going to be on the outside of the frame. So there's that part. And then the last part is the extended takedown lock. I just did a real quick buff on this. I didn't want to take any of the color or protective coating off of it, because again, if this really doesn't impact the way the thing's going to fire or anything like that. So it is pretty smooth as is. But yeah, I did, just took the buff wheel to it just to take out any imperfections, and it is nice and smooth as well. So that is the end of the polishing of all the parts for the frame. All right, with that, I am going to call this a video. I also did forget to mention that I did take the buff wheel and just go over what I could on the four rails, basically, that the slide engages. They were already pretty smooth, but I figured I had it out, might as well mess with it. So those were also buffed as well. So that being said, that's where I'm going to end this video. Next video, I'll pick up with the reassembly and function of the frame, walk through all that, and then there will be a video series doing all the same stuff to the slide. So if you like what you're seeing, you want to follow along, please hit like, please hit subscribe, please hit the notification bell. If you have any questions or comments, please leave them in the comment section below. I do review them. I will reply. I do have a second YouTube channel devoted to automotive stuff. If that's something that interests you, check it out. There is a link in the description of this video. And I also have a Rumble channel that is going to be devoted to firearms for the most part. If you're on Rumble, please check it out. There is a link in the description as well. That being said, thank you very much for watching, and have a great day.